Can you imagine an ancient beauty? A fair-skinned Roman woman with perfect hair, an Egyptian woman with eyes like Cleopatra's, or a Greek girl who exudes mythical perfection? It sounds beautiful. Too beautiful. Now imagine another scene. A Roman woman sits in front of a bronze mirror. A slave mixes a thick white paste in a clay bowl. The woman raises her fingers to her face, runs them over her cheeks, and her skin becomes smooth, like a statue. The guests at the banquet gasp with admiration. But beneath this radiance, sores are already appearing, and teeth are slowly loosening. Beauty is like a mask of death. Because all this beauty had a downside. It stank, festered, and killed. In the ancient world, cosmetics were not a makeup kit, but a slow poison. The first mandatory feature of an ancient beauty was white, pure skin. No tan, no blush, just a cold pallor, like a marble statue. And they achieved this with lead white. Yes, lead. The same metal that is dangerous today even in wall paint, but back then it was generously applied to the face layer after layer to hide wrinkles and freckles. The result? At parties, women glowed like goddesses, but at home their skin rotted, became covered with sores, and their teeth loosened and fell out. It was slow lead poisoning. The irony is that the worse the face looked, the thicker the layer of white lead was applied. It was a vicious circle with no way out. The biggest victims of this fashion were wealthy Roman women and Greek matrons. Poorer women often resorted to simpler means, rubbing their skin with oil or even ashes. The result was worse, but safer. Paradoxically, it was the poor who lived longer and had fewer health problems than those who could afford the luxury. There are specific examples. Poppaea Sabina, Nero's wife, was obsessed with her appearance. She used white lead every day and performed legendary beauty rituals. She even bathed in donkey milk to preserve her youth. Her cult of beauty became a symbol of how far women could go in their pursuit of the ideal. Modern bloggers make videos about the top 5 dangerous products for the skin? Back then, every other item on such a list could have actually killed you. And yet no one refused to use them because fashion demanded it. Cosmetics, which were supposed to beautify, literally ate women alive. Imagine the home of a Roman matron. She sits on a low chair, surrounded by bustling slaves. One is holding a heavy wig made of someone else's hair. Another is fanning her face with a fan because the wig smells of ammonia. Another slave is combing strands of hair, and lice are falling out of them. This is not a beauty salon, but a small factory of pain and stench. In ancient times, the perfect hairstyle was a symbol of status. The taller and more complex the masterpiece on a woman's head, the richer she was. But these hairstyles were not made from the women's own well-groomed hair, but from someone else's. Sometimes from the heads of slaves, sometimes even from dead women. In Rome, wigs could be made from the hair of dead women. Now imagine. You are wearing not just a decoration, but a part of someone else's body. And that's not the worst of it. Wigs were infested with lice. They were not washed with shampoo, but instead, insect cocoons were placed inside to clean them by eating the parasites. In essence, they wore a living incubator on their heads. To lighten their hair, they used a completely different beauty product, human urine. It was collected in clay pots, infused, and then used to wash the hair. Ammonia bleaches, after all. The perfect blonde was achieved with the most disgusting means imaginable. Here again, there is a striking contrast. Poor women had simple braids held in place with oil. Wealthy Roman women wore wigs that stank of ammonia and were infested with lice. Incidentally, even men followed fashion. Some senators and emperors hid their bald spots under wigs. The poetry of the time preserved mocking remarks. A true beauty is easily recognized by the traces of glue from her wig on the back of her head. Modern hair dyes are child's play in comparison. We complain about the chemical smell in the salon. Back then, a beauty salon was a barrel of urine and a head full of parasites. Imagine an evening banquet in the home of a Roman patrician. Hundreds of lamps burn in the hall, tables are groaning with food, and the air is unbreathable. Dozens of women in white dresses and heavy hairstyles are generously smeared with thick perfumes. The smell is so thick that it seems you could cut it with a knife. But it's not flowers or fruit. It's fat, resin, and decay. The perfumes of ancient times had nothing in common with modern Chanel or Dior bottles. They were based on a mixture of animal fat and resin. Herbs, ashes, and sometimes even rotten fish or excrement were added to it. To us, this sounds like horror, but back then it was believed that the stronger and more persistent the smell, the greater the luxury. The poor also used fragrances, but their options were simpler: smoke from fragrant herbs, olive oil with a drop of vinegar. They disappeared quickly, but at least they weren't suffocating. Wealthy women and men considered it prestigious to smell so that the whole house could smell it. It was a demonstration of status, like today's brand name handbag logo. Incidentally, men were not far behind. Senators and even emperors abused perfumes. The poet Martial joked that some of them seemed to bathe in a bottle. The scents not only smelled strong, but also literally ate into the skin. They were sticky, difficult to wash off, and left greasy marks on the skin and hair. Imagine an antiperspirant that leaves you smelling like a tomb instead of fresh. Imagine a room where a young Greek woman is getting ready for the gymnasium. Two slaves hold her arms while a third pours hot resin on her feet. The skin burns, the girl grits her teeth to keep from screaming. Then the resin is torn off abruptly along with the hair, pieces of skin, and a scream that finally escapes from her chest. This was not care, but torture. Because the ideal of antiquity demanded a smooth, hairless body. And the methods used to achieve this were horrific. Women were literally doused with resin, which burned and stuck so badly that it was unbearable to peel off. Another method was a mixture containing arsenic. This was a real poison. It was applied to the body to burn the hair. The result: chemical burns, ulcers, scars. Smoothness was bought with pain and mutilation. Poorer women resorted to rougher methods, rubbing their bodies with pumice or scraping off their hair with a knife. This was also painful, but at least not fatal. Wealthy victims of fashion paid with their health. It wasn't just women. Men also underwent these procedures in Greek gymnasiums. A smooth body was considered a sign of purity and beauty. It was also a sign of status, as not everyone could afford regular procedures. And what about facial care? Masks. But not made from clay and cucumbers. Rotten vegetables, fermented milk products, and even stale bread were used. The skin was nourished, but the result was rashes, ulcers, and an unbearable smell. Modern spa treatments seem like child's play after that. We complain about the burning sensation of ACI. D peels. But imagine that your peeling is resin, arsenic, and rotten bread. Imagine an evening before a holiday in Egypt. A woman sits in front of a bronze mirror, a slave girl holds a small bone spoon with black powder. She carefully applies kohl to her eyelids, and her gaze becomes dark, expressive, almost magical. But tomorrow her eyes will start to burn and become inflamed. And over time, she may lose her sight. This is because kohl contained not only safe minerals, but also lead and sulfur. It was a slow poison that was applied directly to the eyes. And now there is another trend. To make the eyes look bigger and more mysterious, belladonna juice, a death plant, was dripped into the pupils. The effect was truly hypnotic, the eyes widened, and men lost their heads from such a gaze. But at the same time, vision became blurred, hallucinations began, and poisoning set in. Some lost their sight permanently. It is known that even Cleopatra used kohl. Her dark gaze went down in history, but how many women paid for this effect with their eyesight? And again we see a contrast. Poor women in Egypt lined their eyes with kohl not only for beauty, but also for protection from the sun. In small doses, it really helped. Wealthy matrons and queens dripped belladonna into their eyes for the sake of an effect that destroyed their eyesight. Men were not far behind. Roman senators and warriors also lined their eyes with antimony, considering it a sign of grooming. The poison damaged their eyesight as well. The modern parallel is simple. We are surprised by the risks of Botox or colored contact lenses, but all this seems almost innocent when we remember that people once dripped pure poison into their eyes. Imagine a morning in Rome. A wealthy matron stands in front of a polished bronze mirror. A slave brings a jug with a pungent smell. The woman dips a small horsehair brush into it and begins to scrub her teeth. The room is filled with a stench that makes the slaves wrinkle their noses. But the matron smiles at the mirror, her teeth seem a little whiter. The price, the taste of sewage in her mouth. Yes, the Romans brushed their teeth with real human urine. Because it contained ammonia, which bleaches. The logic was simple: if you want a snow-white smile, you have to endure it. And this was not a strange whim of a few fanatics. It was common practice. What's more, high-quality Portuguese urine was even imported to Rome. Imagine that, international trade in a bleaching agent that we wouldn't even touch today. Wealthy Romans could afford expensive mixtures made from crushed bones or ashes. But urine remained the basis. The poor rubbed their teeth with ash or charcoal. Ironically, their budget option was safer. Both men and women wanted a snow-white smile. It was a sign of health and attractiveness. And both rinsed their mouths with the same natural bleach. Modern people choose between toothpaste with or without fluoride. Back then, there was no choice. If you wanted to look attractive, you had to clean your teeth with what we would now consider horrific. Now imagine the same woman we saw at the beginning. Sitting in front of the mirror, the slave once again holding a clay bowl with lead white. Several years have passed. Her skin is covered with sores, her teeth are loose, and her eyes are dull. But she cannot give up makeup. Without it, she will not be allowed to attend the banquet, her neighbors will turn away in contempt, and her husband will say that she has let herself go. She raises her fingers to her face, applies another layer of poisonous white lead, and for a moment becomes a beauty again. A beauty that kills. Poisonous white makeup, wigs made from dead people's hair, perfumes made from tar and rot, belladonna in the eyes, teeth rubbed with urine, all this was part of a game where the price was youth, health, and life. And here is the final question that cannot be avoided. How far have we run from that trap? We don't use urine or lead, but we continue to risk our health for the sake of standards, Botox, aggressive diets, filters that create an unrealistic image. Perhaps the most dangerous cosmetics are not those we put on our skin, but those we put on our minds.